Home and Finance Radio. Within every market there are solutions as well as tremendous opportunities. You just need some trusted guidance. That's my message, and as your consumer advocate, I will be delivering it every day on Ron Siegel Radio or anytime at 800-306-1990. That's 800-306-1990. The real-time real estate segment today brought to you by that down payment assistance program. It's math time. The math teacher is in. FHA loans require a 3.5% down payment. There are several programs, and it doesn't make sense for you to know which they all are, that will offer you a 3% down payment assistance. 3.5 minus 3, even this simple man can come up with that being 1/2 of 1%. Multiply that times a $400,000 house, you get a $2,000 down payment. If you are using a great real estate agent, they might be able to show you some ways of minimizing your closing costs. Think about that. Now, I understand that from the people that I know listening this morning, this probably doesn't affect you, but I bet it does affect your kids and your grandkids. We are at wedding season, we are at graduation season. $2,000 down payment on a $400,000 house. Let's think about this logically. What's going to last longer, that house or the Apple MacBook Pro? I have nothing against Apple products, but I bet that house lasts longer, and one appreciates, one depreciates. Think about that if you're thinking maybe grandma, grandpa, a couple of grandparents, parents. Great gift idea. How about a new house as a gift? Think about that. That is the down payment assistance program. Some ways to improve your home's curb appeal. This comes, always like to look at the ideas of items that will inexpensively increase curb appeal. A little bit of color, maybe get rid of some of the dry rot that is outside. Might be an interesting thought. Fix the mailbox. If it's falling over, it might give somebody a bad impression as they walk into the house. Remember this, that what your property looks like outside is going to be very important, because when you walk up to a property, unless it's an open house, the likelihood is you're going to walk up to a property with your real estate agent. It's going to take them a little bit of time, maybe not a lot, to open up the lockbox and unlock the front door if they're going and showing you several houses. While they're doing that, the person they're showing your home to is looking around out front. If you've got a bunch of dead plants and dry rot and peeling paint, probably not the best first impression. Get some plants, some live plants. Go down to Home Depot or wherever. It's not going to cost a lot of money, but it is a first impression. Just a couple ideas for improving your home's curb appeal. That is the real-time real estate segment today, brought to you by that down payment assistance program. We are continuing our conversation this morning with Amy Von Esch, Von Esch Law Group. I forgot to mention this, Amy, but I should throw this in right now. When I mentioned that you can get a hold of Amy by calling the 800 number, that is how you would reach our off-air number. I would put you in touch with Amy. As Amy and I chat this morning, Amy is an attorney. She gets paid for the advice she gives. She is here to help us educate you. This is not legal advice, so don't go calling and saying, Amy said. It's not going to work. We are educating you. If you want professional legal advice, you are more than welcome to get that from Amy. She's got an office here in Southern California, and all you have to do is call the 800 number. I'll put you in touch with her, and you can get maybe they can probably get all the legal advice they want then, right?
Absolutely. That's really great.
There you go. It's just the way of the world. So, continuing our conversation, we've been joined this morning also by Melinda Johnson, Freedom First Properties. Welcome.
Good morning.
We're gonna go and we can talk. We were talking before the break about separations, about how we can figure out who's going to get the house. Does the house have to be sold before the divorce goes through, or when in the process? If we chatted about the fact that neither party should really, unless they can buy out the other or the house is free and clear, we don't want the departing party to be on a mortgage after they've left. Personal opinion, I'm not a lawyer, I can't give legal advice because I'm not a lawyer. Just my opinion from many, many years of doing this. But if that's the case, when does the house have to be sold?
Well, the end point of a house being sold is at judgment time. So generally at the time of the trial, there'll be a determination who gets the opportunity to buy the other party out. And if they're unable to buy the other party out within a certain period of time that the court feels is reasonable, then the house will have to be listed for sale.
So, but that, to me, and I'm going to ask your opinion. I'm the novice at this. I have no experience at all when it comes to divorce. Would it not be better off if somebody's counseling the parties to get the house sold before the court gets involved?
Well, it's always better because to do it before the court gets involved, because then you're in control. If you go into court, you're no longer in control of your own lives. The guy or the woman in the big black robe sitting above you is the one that's in control.
So the idea here is, and I would suggest also not only that they're in control, but if it waits until that point, the legal expenses are going to mount up even higher as well, because I can't get along with the person that I married at some point in time. And so now we've decided that we're not going to get along, we're going to fight with each other, and we're going to give all of our money to attorneys. Basically, that's the idea. If we can't come to you and say, hey, you know something, Amy, this is where we are. Can you document this for us and share with us the legal foundations? Have we made any mistakes? If we can do that all coming to you, it's probably better off, isn't it?
It's always better off to try to mediate your case than going down the road of litigation. Litigation's not an inexpensive venture. It's expensive, and it generally involves legal fees and expert fees and sometimes court fees. So yeah, it's always better to try to mediate it and come to terms of settlements before you get down that road. But a lot of times that's not possible. Not because they don't get along, but because sometimes an attorney can't give a recommendation without the opinions of experts.
That makes sense. So if we've got a house involved in the divorce, and we're kind of throwing some of the other assets and the other items, we're dealing more with the real estate side today, how would two attorneys and two parties come about a fair price? Do they hire an appraiser? Is that the idea?
Generally, both parties would either agree to hire a mutual appraiser, or they each hire their own appraisers and maybe meet in the middle if those appraisals differ in values.
So they can. So that's a pretty simple and fairly inexpensive way of coming about. Because I mean, obviously, I know appraisals because of the lending side, and Melinda's here. Your firm does appraisals as well. $500 for most houses. I think you can get an appraisal if you need two of them. One for each party. $1,000 and come up with a number, right?
Yeah, and a lot of times parties will, have one party do the appraisal, and if the appraisal comes in and it's reasonable to the other side, then they may not go do another appraisal. But if they think that the value is higher or the value is lower, and you're talking about a buyout, then they might want to do the other appraisal. Will
a court order something different than what the parties, if both parties agree on a specific appraisal? We just heard that, I'm a sports junkie. The parties agreed in the football case to a certain amount of money for the concussions. And the court came back and said, something, I don't think that's right. So they vacated that decision or wouldn't sign off on it. Will a court sign off on an appraisal as long as they're presented by a professional or a licensed appraiser?
Generally, in the family law arena, the court's going to sign off on whatever the parties can agree to.
Okay,
as
so
long as it's reasonable.
Okay, so if they agree to it, then hopefully they're being represented by competent counsel.
If the court finds they're being represented by competent counsel and they're both being represented by counsel, then they're going to sign off on what the parties agree to. That's when I talk about mediating it. You can come to terms of the entire division, the support, the custody and visitation. You can come to those agreements, have an attorney write it up, and have one party go seek their independent counsel, and then you get a judgment and you put it into a stipulated judgment, file it with a court, and you never even make an appearance in front of the judge.
Nice.
So there is that possibility, and it is the most cost-effective way to get through such an emotional stage in one's life.
Let me lay out this scenario. I don't know if I'll be able to lay it out and we'll be able to talk about it before the break, or if I lay it out, we may have to come back to it. But I'm old. That's kind of a given. I have a house that I've had for 10 years. I get married. We're married 20 years. And then we decide that we can't get along. Now we've got this house that was my property. I made the down payment. I made payments for 10 years. We're married though for 20 years. I've actually owned this property 30 years. And we decide to separate. How does the equity get separated then?
Well, a few different factors are you're asking me. If you have purchased the house prior to marriage, it's considered, there's a presumption that it's your separate property.
Okay.
And if the community is living in the house, they're going to have, under the theory of more marsden, they're going to have a community interest in that house because the community over the last 20 years has been paying down on the house. So the community is going to have an interest in the house. That's assuming that wife never went on title to the house during those 20 years.
Interesting. We're going to chat more about this. We'll give Amy a little chance to think about this one. See if I can stump the expert. You are listening to Ron Siegel, Home and Finance Radio, discussing your real estate, current events, and the financial markets. More with Amy Von Esch and Melinda Johnson when we come back. We might even talk about some tips to protect your